From Georgia to Germany, compare two unique quilt shops. We begin here in Marietta, Georgia at Little Quilts and end at the Snail Trail Shop in Germany. In between, we study the quilt alphabet, the letters E and F.
Could you imagine a more clever object? Warms the body, ignites the mind. A child sleeps under mother's creation, together forever. The art of the heart and design of the mind puts you to bed one day at a time. The art of the heart and design of the mind.
Little quilts have a natural appeal to quilters. They can be challenging, but they are very fast, they're decorative, and truly emulate our full-size bed covers. Three names that have been identified with little quilts over the years are Alice Berg, Marietta VolHolt, and Sylvia Johnson. For years they have been published, but finally they have their own shop. It's great to have an opportunity to hear from all three of you. Alice, how did all this get started?
Well, welcome to Georgia.
Thank you.
Georgia.
Okay.
Well, for 15 years we've had a wholesale business, and over the years many people came to the Atlanta area. They would look us up and they would say, "You don't have a store?" And we just finally said, let's do it. We have mostly a reproduction store mixed with home decor, rug hooking and stitchery. It's just a wonderland of happy things to do, and people walk in the door and they're in our world, is what we say. Step into our world.
Cute world.
Cute world. In fact, someone said you need to put a sign at the door that says, "Warning, entering the cute zone." And so we are a visual explosion when you come in of projects and happy things to do, and we try to create that. It's a lot of work, but really a labor of love.
Sylvia, you must share with us now how three ladies working together. I mean, is it a fight every day, or
No.
you go to bed speaking?
We do. When we do travel and teach a lot, and that's one of the most popular questions. At the end, when we get through all the design ideas, the decorating ideas, the question is, how do three ladies work together for 15, almost 17 years? And the big answer is we compromise a lot. We really do. We've almost become more like sisters than partners. One thing we like to tell people that if there was this house sitting on the side of the road, Mary Ellen would be the person to get it moved for you.
Okay.
That's production. She could get it right across the street for you. Then I would get your financing for it.
Okay.
I could do that for you. And then Alice would go in and decorate it for you.
Miss Cutesy.
So it works out real well for us
Okay.
all to work together like that, and it's been successful, and we all have enjoyed it a lot.
That's wonderful. Well, Mary Ellen, why don't you describe the store a little bit and give us a rundown? I see fabric everywhere. Is that part of your hints?
We have a lot of fabric here. We just tend to look at what's presented to us and try to pick out the colors and the styles that keep in the reproduction area, which is our main focus. So we had to come up with a recipe and a formula, and that's how we arrived with our magic fabric assortment. We suggest this arrangement of colors incorporated with the fabrics you like or you personally like to work with, and your quilt will take on more of a reproduction or look like it was an old quilt made with new fabrics. To help the quilt maker, we've put packages together for this little recipe, we call it. We're kind of forcing people to buy browns and golds and colors they might not like to purchase, and then they use it and they find out they like it in their finished project. Then they come in on their own and buy yards of the colors they're not used to. So we do sell these here at the store, and we have a mail order that we sell to a lot of our customers that way. So this is our recipe for magic fabrics.
Alice, I understand that classes are a part of your shop.
They are. We offer a newsletter quarterly, and we list all the classes, and people really do come in. We mostly teach traditionally inspired projects. We teach stitchery, quilt making. We also teach rug hooking, and today you just happen to be here for our rug hooking class, so we invite you to come in and try your hand at it.
I'm on my way
Great.
downstairs.
We'll look forward to it. All right, we've learned about how to prepare your wool by washing it before you use it. That removes the body oils and prevents moths. We have some that has been hand dyed. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but our wool is ready. Now what do we do? So there are lots of things to learn. One is what kind of equipment and what types of background that you might use, your foundation. There are different types. One would be linen. Linen is more expensive but very nice and a natural fiber. Another is burlap, and it's a different burlap than you would get if you were just going to a regular store. This is an imported burlap that is more evenly woven. We have a cutter, and a cutter is a very unusual looking machine, but it will cut your wool into what I call fettuccine strips that aid you in your hooking. You can hand cut your wool by snipping it with scissors, but look what happens when you use a rug cutter. Your wool goes in and you crank it and out comes your strips of wool. And now you have what I call wool fettuccine. And we use this to hook in our design. All right. First thing we do is hold the hook in the palm of your hand, and it's sort of a lifting process. You're not gouging or digging something out, but if you can put in your mind what you're doing, you're lifting up a strip of wool through the holes in the background, nothing more than that. But there is some skill to that, as you will find out. You don't hook right on the line of a motif, because if you did, your design would grow just a little bit. So you go just inside the line, and all of the endings and beginnings come to the top. There are no knots, and they all just hold themselves in there because they're sort of packed in. All right, the next step is to put your hook down through the hole and lift up a loop about the height that the strip is wide. That's the general rule of thumb. You lift up the loop about as high as it is wide, and they begin to look like little corn kernels. You want to see a little hole in the side, and you just twist and turn. Looks easy, doesn't it? Just like the Vegematic. And we just follow the outline to go around. Now you'll notice I'm not hooking in every hole, because if I did, I would have a very packed piece. So I skip 2 threads and go in the next hole. If you think of things that you want to do along the way, there is no problem with drawing on your burlap. And if there's something you really didn't like about your design, or you wanted to change something, or a color didn't work, it's not the end of the world. You just simply pull out your strip that you did and kind of mush your strips back together. It's pretty painless after you get going. I did a snowman, and the snowman's arms I pulled out at least 10 times because I could not find the right contrast. This is a rug that I did of my boys. They're all grown big boys now, but that was when I had control of them. On the far wall, I have a rabbit rug that was designed from a quilt pattern. It's a very relaxing form of craft, because you can get up and leave it very easily. You don't have to get ready to do it. You can sit down for 5 minutes and do some hooking, then get up and start dinner or whatever you have to do. And amazingly, those 5 minutes add up to a rug. So let's get going. Everybody get their work ready, and we'll start hooking.
Mary Ellen, the outside of your store is so charming, and then when we got inside, it is so much going on everywhere and lots of customers. That's the way every shop should be. Tell us a little more about what goes on here.
Well, we enjoy the customers and helping. Our staff serves the people very well and tries to help them with their projects. We have ongoing demonstrations on different techniques. We do a demo on applique. Wanda, one of our staff members, teaches people shortcut techniques in mini sessions.
Can Wanda show us just a couple
Wanda's
of hints?
going to show you a couple of tips on needle rolling and how to prepare your fabric and make everybody an applique expert.
Okay. Wanda, give us the title of your demo today.
It's a type of applique using the needle turn technique.
All right, and I see you have some special tools out there other than your beautiful hands. Tell us what you use.
I use the scissors that are sharp, small embroidery scissors. It must be sharp to the point. I use a silk thread, which is a very fine thread, which helps in hiding the stitches. I use a thread conditioner that keeps your thread from tangling. And the toothpick is to help turn the edges under when your needle may fray the seam allowance.
What size needle do you use, Wanda?
The needle is a straw needle, which is a size 10. If you're using silk thread, you don't want to use anything smaller than a 10 because it frays the thread.
Oh, I see. All right, well, let's watch you perform a little bit more.
Okay. You take your needle and you're working just about an inch ahead, and the needle goes in a little behind your last stitch, and then tug in the direction you're going. The stitches should be about 1/8 of an inch apart. When you come to a curve, they should be smaller. You'll probably take them about 1/16 of an inch apart and give it a little tug. That little tug helps pull the stitches down into the fabric so they're not visible.
It's beautiful. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for great demos and the opportunity to tour this wonderful shop. Been great.
Well, we're glad you walked through our door and got to visit. We, over the years, have always said the doors have opened for us. We've walked through many unknown doors, designing fabric or writing a book, and when we opened the door to the store, we really felt confident in what we were doing and hope that people will enjoy themselves when they come in, and we have a great staff to help them. We hope you'll come back. We enjoyed your visit so much.
Keep
Thank
up the good work,
We'll
and
try.
now I get to go to the cash register.
Come on.
Okay. Well, I left Marietta, Georgia, and Little Quilt Shop with my own rug hooking kit, a cat, of course. Actually, I'm the quilter, my mother's the hooker, so this is a present to her. On today's show, entitled From Georgia to Germany, our quilter's alphabet letters are E and F. So let's start with E for echo quilting. Quilting lines that radiate outward to outline or mimic a pieced or appliqued shape. What a beautiful example of Genevieve Grundy's quilt entitled Martha's Vineyard. Look how she has echo quilted out from the vines and the grapes. And you see how they just magnify that shape? Just lovely. E is for English piecing. Patchwork piecing achieved by hand basting fabric with a seam allowance onto cutout shapes and then whip stitching the sections together by holding the right sides together. Well, here's a kit that I bought years ago, some wonderful Laura Ashley fabric, and yes, it's already cut in hexagons, which is the traditional shape. And here is how you can do it long ago, just cutting out the shapes and basting them on. But today, freezer paper really updates the method. If the poly-coated side is up, you can simply press those seam allowances onto that side. You can also just press the poly-coated side to the wrong side of the hexagon and then simply work those edges over, putting the right sides together, whip stitching it together. Now I have a sample here that I'd like you to look at where I've actually done part of it by hand, whip stitched them, and part of it on the sewing machine with a very narrow zigzag stitch. And honestly, I don't think you can tell the difference. E is for embroidery floss. Cotton, rayon, or silk floss used as a decoration on applique and crazy patch blocks, usually with 3 strands and an embroidery needle. Now, does your embroidery thread look like this? Well, I have found that these stitch holders that are used for knitting work great for storing the embroidery thread. I guess I could do the fin and feather stitch all day. It's one of my favorites. From our show last time when we did Crazy Patch, let me give you a few pointers in doing that fin and feather. The needle comes up in the middle, and then each time you need to rely on your offhand. So that thumb is going to hold this thread in place, and I'm going to turn and do one of these on the left side and then the right side. The needle goes in, it's angled and comes up toward the center, right near that seam, and pulls through. And if I've done one on the left, then I come over on the right, go down just a little bit below, and do the same angle and come in. Do you see how this thumb holds that thread down? You could just go on and on. 3 on one side, 3 on the other, a French knot at the end. Now there is a swifter way to do this, and that would be on the sewing machine. I have engaged my number 332, and with my gold rayon thread, I'm ready to simply start in the center, and I have a line right on my presser foot that can align with my seam, and that makes it really nice. And you can see the nice decorative stitch that I can do. Of course, I can keep all one thread, or I could change threads as I'm going along. F is for fabric, the prime necessity in all quilt making. Cotton proves to be the best. Just a minute, let me check. Ah, yes. This is just part of my stash. F is for Feedsacks, fabric printed long ago with decorative designs and made into flour, sugar, and grain sacks, in demand today as collectibles. Do you remember Jane Clark's staple? Well, she started the Feedsack Club. They have their own website, and at their next convention, a lady is coming with samples of 17,000 different Feedsack samples. They are so much fun. F is for Flexicurve, a drafting tool used to create curves. It's wonderful for sew and flip and also for designing. Here are just a few of the results. F is for a foolproof knot. Now that's in lieu of the dirty, rolled, sticky finger knot. You would thread a needle with about 18 to 24 inch length of thread, and of course you're going to use your short quilting needle. The unknotted end goes toward the needle, hold that in place, and wrap that about 2 or 3 times around the needle. Then pull it down the length of that thread all the way down, and you will end up with what I call a tail at the end. Snip that tail off, and then you are ready to start quilting. With my offhand underneath, I'm going to come through, and I'm quilting about 1/4 of an inch from this star, and so I like to use this 1/4 inch masking tape. And you will hear that needle just pull through with the knot making a little noise, and then I'm ready to start my quilting stitch. And notice how I'm using that indented thimble, which helps me do that rocking motion as I pull the thread through. Needle goes in, take that eye and let it be locked in the end of that thimble, and then I'm ready to just quilt towards me. F is for fudging, to make things work out when they're not quite perfect in patchwork. I even have a new term to go with fudging. It's called even the offness. When sewing patches together, if they're off just a little bit, make sure that the same amount ekes out one side that ekes out the other. That's called even the offness. We had to fudge in portulaca. I wanted the square to line up with the triangle, so we'd have an interesting elongated hexagon here. It meant shifting the block and putting these little tiny 1/2 inch squares at these intersections where we could twirl these wonderful fabrics, and then had these strips in between. Now, we're off to Germany, to the Snail Trail Quilt Shop. Join us. In a small village next to Lake Constance in Germany, I found the Snail Trail Quilt Shop. How nice to be greeted by Timmy, the family pet. The home is the shop. Customers wander from room to room, finding quilts and fabric everywhere you turn. Let's hear from Ursula Schobbert, the proprietor. Tell me the name of your town, because I have a hard time pronouncing it.
It's on a little town, Lellwangen.
How did all this get started? How did you start this quilt shop?
We lived for 2 years in America, in Florida, and when I started quilting there, and we lived in Stuttgart, and we moved to the Bodensee 10 years ago. And my husband retired 5 years ago, and I thought, well, it's nice to have a shop, and I opened this.
But I understand that you, at the beginning, carried actually 2 suitcases over here of American fabrics,
Yes.
and that's what got your friends all excited.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to learn about patchwork.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a small community like this, how do you spread the word? How do you let people know about patchwork?
I give classes, so people talk together and oh, go there. And in the Patchwork Guild I have an announcement.
I see.
So the people came when they have vacation here.
Well, when we were taking a tour, I enjoyed looking at your very first sampler quilts, and we always say you have to crawl before you walk, and
Yes.
that is a beginning for so many quilters.
To this time I had time and I made every stitch by hand. It's no machine sewing on it.
And you still begin a lot of your pieced classes with that, right? Yes.
I think it's important for the people to start with it, and then they can do more and more sewing machine, because everybody
Make that progression, go to machine. And because I thought that was a good comment. You told me that it's harder to go back to handwork after you start a machine work. So that's a very good point I think you made.
And the people, first they say, oh, by hand, but then they make more things by hand, because you can put it everywhere.
Take it with you.
Yes.
Ursula gave me a mini lesson from one of their craft classes. In just 3 easy steps, colorful eggs can adorn trees. First, styrofoam eggs are scored into 4 divisions. Second, the fabric is tucked in those slots with the back side of a knife. Third, the segments are wrapped in ribbon and pinned in place with a bow on top. And look what I brought back from Germany. Ursula invited a quilting friend to come to her home. I had a terrible time with her name. It is such a treat to talk with Laura Blennemann today. And we are here once again at the Snail Trail Quilt Shop. And you're a friend of Ushi's and have come over to share your quilts with us. I understand you have the distinction of being the first quilting teacher 31 years ago
That's right,
in Germany, and I know you're very proud of that.
Yes, I
Tell us the history of that, how that started.
I was for 6 months in Chicago, and I saw quilts by Barbara Benson. She was a laundry. She has a laundry for old quilts.
Yes.
And I saw it, and I was so amazed. It was so fantastic. So I thought, this I will bring to my children by my school.
And you're an art teacher.
Yes, I'm an art teacher.
Well, what fascinates us today is the fact that you've combined different fabric in a more contemporary style.
And I began with linen. And then I took silk, because silk has so bright, wonderful colors.
And this one, I understand, is called When Linen Meets Silk.
Yes, it is.
I'm especially taken by the quilting design on that. I understand it was a challenge.
Yes, it was.
Drunkard's Path.
Drunkard's Path, yeah.
Explain to us how you came up with that and what threads you used for the
Yes,
quilting.
I take linen thread, embroidery thread, more bigger than quilting yarn, and I make the design with this embroidery stitches.
We just praise you for continuing the quilt story and the quilt lessons in Germany, and it has become such an international art craft, hasn't it? Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Naturally, I had to do a Snail Trail Quilt Shop block, and complete with tiny little snail trail windows. And that became a lot easier when I used a very lightweight interfacing, because if I just sewed and flipped my pieces like foundation piecing, I could just keep that in and not even pull it out. Well, they had a grand goodbye for us, as only a German quilt shop could, complete with homemade food and great German brew.
Closed caption made possible by OmniGrid, manufacturer of the original patented black and yellow rulers and green cutting mats. And Collins, well known for notions and tools for quilt makers. For more information about patterns and designs shown on this series, visit Georgia at www.georgiabonesteel.com. Lap quilting with Georgia Bonesteel is made possible in part by grants from Bernina, makers of sewing machines manufactured with the care of traditional Swiss workmanship. Nothing sews like a Bernina. Nothing. By Gamel Quilting Machine Company, offering 4 sizes of long-arm hand-guided machines to quilters worldwide. By Coates & Clark, America's #1 name in sewing, hand knitting, and craft products. By Martingale & Company, home of That Patchwork Place, publisher of America's best-loved craft and hobby books. By Hobbs Bonded Fibers, maker of heirloom premium cotton and wool batting, with a package labeling system to help quilters select the correct batting for specific projects. And by Horn of America, cabinets of the future today.